Have you ever lost everything in the same breath, the person you loved most and the place where you thought you were safe? That was me. My name is Amanda. A few weeks ago, I buried my father, the only parent I had ever known. Losing him was like losing the part of me that knew how to be strong. I couldn't think, I couldn't breathe, and yet I still tried to hold it all together. I took 3 days off work. 3 days. I had written approval. My boss replied to my leave request with 5 words. Take the time you need. I believed her. That was my mistake. The morning I came back, the office felt colder. My coworkers smiled with pity. Something was off. Before I could even sit down, I was called into her office. She didn't offer condolences. She didn't even look up from her laptop. Amanda, she said, your position has been terminated. Effective immediately. I blinked. What? We needed someone reliable. Someone who doesn't let personal matters interfere with work. I stood frozen, heart pounding. You approved my leave. My father died. She looked at me like I was complaining about traffic. And now you have all the time you need to grieve, she said, handing me an envelope. Just like that. No warning. No respect. No humanity. I walked out in silence. Not just jobless, but humiliated, discarded, betrayed. But what she didn't know is that I would remember that moment for the rest of my life. Not because it broke me, but because it lit a fire I never knew I had. And if you think this story is about pain, you haven't seen how it ends. Have you ever stood outside a place you gave your all to, only to realize you were never more than disposable? That's what I felt as I clutched the envelope and walked away from the office I had once called a second home. The sun was blinding that day. A cruel contrast to the storm inside me. I didn't go home. I couldn't. The house still smelled like my dad's cologne, and the silence in his room felt heavier than any words. So I sat in my car, numb, reading the paper my boss had handed me. It wasn't even a real explanation, just a line about performance expectations and the needs of the department. No mention of the 3 days I took to bury my father. No mention of the years I spent covering shifts, meeting deadlines, going above and beyond. Just a signature. Cold. Legal. Final. I spent the rest of the day in silence. No crying. No screaming. Just empty. And then, as the sun dipped behind the trees, I opened my laptop. I didn't search for jobs. I searched for her name. I wanted to know who she really was. The boss who smiled during morning meetings and posted quotes about teamwork on social media, but couldn't offer 5 seconds of basic compassion. And what I found made my blood run cold. Posts about her leadership style. Photos from networking events. But more than that, reviews, anonymous employee reviews. She weaponizes empathy. Makes you feel safe, until you're no longer useful. I was let go during chemo. No warning. She's not human. She's strategy in a skirt. I read every word. And something clicked. This wasn't personal for her. This was pattern. And for the first time since the funeral, I felt something sharp inside me. Not sadness. Not fear. Focus. I may have left quietly, but I was never meant to stay silent. She had fired the wrong person. And before this story ends, she was going to remember my name, and regret ever forgetting it. Have you ever been so deeply wronged that you stop seeking justice, and start becoming it? That's what I felt brewing in me that week. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not my best friend, not my sister, not even Lily, my neighbor who always checked in on me after Dad passed. I needed time to process, not the loss, but the betrayal. And while I stayed quiet, I watched. Her social media was a goldmine. She had curated her image so carefully: empowered woman in leadership, mental health advocate, empathy is everything. That last one nearly made me laugh. She fired me during a funeral. I started saving screenshots. Her posts. Her quotes. Her corporate awards. I wasn't entirely sure what I was collecting, at first. But something told me these pieces would come together soon. Then came the twist. An old colleague reached out. Julia. She and I hadn't spoken in months. She messaged me out of the blue. I heard what happened. She did the same thing to me last year, when I took time off for surgery. I've been waiting for someone to speak up. My chest tightened. There are more of us, she wrote. Some are scared. Some signed NDAs. But they're out there. This wasn't just my story. It was a pattern. A method. And suddenly, I wasn't alone. We spoke that night on the phone. 4 hours. She told me everything. How the boss would pretend to care, then wait for the moment people were weakest, to cut them off quietly, legally, and without a trace. But traces always exist. Especially when people like me start connecting the dots. So I did something bold. I made a new email. I wrote one sentence. If you've ever been fired unfairly, anonymously share your story here. Then I created a form. Simple. Secure. Quiet. I didn't promote it. I just sent it to a handful of names. Former colleagues. People who left suddenly. People who disappeared without explanation. And within 48 hours. 11 stories. Different years. Different reasons. Same person. Same cold signature. She thought I was grieving. But I was documenting. And she had no idea what was coming next. Have you ever uncovered so much truth that it made your own pain feel validated? That's what it felt like reading those messages. 11 stories. 11 people who, just like me, had been discarded when they were at their most vulnerable. One had just lost a child. Another was battling depression. One woman had taken leave after a miscarriage. All of them had glowing performance reviews, until they didn't. Each message was a mirror. And behind every one, I saw my boss's shadow, calculated, ruthless, disguised in kindness. I knew I couldn't go public yet. She still held the power of image. And people like her know how to spin a narrative. Amanda was emotional, she misunderstood, we had no choice. So I waited. And I kept listening. I started recording voice memos, my thoughts, the timeline, what she said to me, word for word. I gathered every email. Every receipt of approval. I printed every team-building quote she ever posted online, highlighting the irony in every word. It wasn't just a collection anymore. It was a case. And with every night that passed, I stopped crying. And started building. Have you ever realized that the moment you stopped asking for justice, was the moment you became it? The real turning point came on a Tuesday. I was at the grocery store, headphones in, listening to another voice memo. And then, out of nowhere, I heard her voice. Live. She was giving a virtual, wellness talk for a local leadership forum. I clicked the link. There she was. Sitting in a sleek office, smiling. At our company, we value people above all. We understand that personal loss affects productivity. That's why we support our employees through every chapter of life. I almost dropped my phone. It wasn't just hypocrisy. It was performance. And suddenly, I saw the weakness. She was no longer just a bad boss. She was a brand. And that brand had a reputation to protect. So I clipped the video. Saved it. And that night, I contacted a journalist. Not just any journalist, someone who had written about workplace injustice before. I didn't give her everything. Just enough. A teaser. There's a woman who's made a career out of firing people when they're grieving, and branding it as leadership. Her response was instant. I want to hear more. And just like that, the silence began to crack. Have you ever looked at someone who tried to destroy you, and realized you held the match to their carefully built image? That week, the journalist, Rachel, called me back. We spoke for hours. I didn't just give her my story. I gave her everything. The testimonies. The fake sympathy emails. The performance reviews that turned cold right after someone became inconvenient. I gave her the whole pattern. She asked if I wanted to be named. I said no. Because this wasn't about me anymore. It was about us. The article went live 2 weeks later. Headline: The Empathy Illusion, When Corporate Kindness Ends at Your Weakest Moment. She wasn't named directly, yet. But the story was clear enough that anyone who had worked there would recognize her. And as the comments flooded in, so did new stories. This happened to my sister. I always felt like I was next. Thank you for writing this. I thought I was alone. The momentum had begun. And as for her, well, let's just say, she stopped posting quotes for a while. Have you ever watched someone try to hide behind their mask, only to realize it was already melting in public? That's exactly what began happening to her. After the article dropped, I expected silence. Maybe a few whispers. But what I didn't expect was how fast the cracks would spread. The following Monday, I got a message from someone I didn't know. He used to work in the HR department at the same company. Thank you, it said. You've opened a door we've all been afraid to walk through. Then another. And another. People were tired of pretending. Tired of feeling like grief, illness, or simply being human was a liability. But while they were finding their voices, she was losing hers. She deleted all comments from her posts. Turned off reviews. Cancelled her next speaking event. One of her awards was quietly removed from a leadership blog. No announcement. No explanation. And still, she didn't know it was me. That's what made it sweeter. Because while she was trying to put out the fire, I was still feeding it. Have you ever seen someone who lived for attention, finally realize the spotlight had turned against them? The company tried to do damage control. Released a vague statement about reassessing internal policies. But it wasn't enough. Not this time. Have you ever looked back at the worst moment of your life, and realized it was the beginning of everything you were meant to become? That's what this was. I was never just an employee. I was never someone who broke quietly. I was someone who watched, remembered, and rebuilt, in silent star. She thought she could erase me. That firing me after my father's funeral would send me into the shadows. That grief would weaken me. She was right about one thing, I was broken. But what she didn't count on was that I would turn that brokenness into a mirror. One that would show the world exactly who she really was. I never replied to her message. I never needed to. The world spoke for me. And now, I have a new job. A better one. With people who ask how you're doing and actually wait for the answer. People who understand that humanity isn't an inconvenience, it's a strength. I still miss my dad every day. But I know he would be proud. Not because I won. But because I chose not to become like her. And maybe that's what real power is. Not destroying someone who hurt you, but taking back what they thought they could steal, and walking away whole. Now tell me, have you ever been betrayed at your lowest moment by someone who was supposed to support you? Share your story in the comments. You never know who needs to hear it, or who you'll inspire. The story had legs. A second news outlet picked it up. Then a podcast. Then a viral thread on social media, millions of views. It wasn't just my story anymore. It was ours. A movement. Former employees started calling her out directly. She's the reason I quit. She smiled at my baby shower and fired me a week later. She told me I was family, until my diagnosis. Her name was no longer followed by praise. It was followed by questions. Where is she now? How did she rise so far? Why did no one say anything sooner? But someone did. I did. And now, everyone was listening. Have you ever been silenced so deeply that you questioned your own worth, only to later hear strangers speak your truth louder than you ever could? I was walking through a bookstore when I heard it. Two women talking in the self-help section. Did you read that article? One asked. About that boss who fired people during funerals. Unreal. There's a woman behind the story who started it. No one knows her name. But I hope she knows we're all with her. I paused. My throat tightened. They were talking about me. Not for fame. Not for pity. But because my silence had become their voice. That night, I got a message. From her. No subject. No greeting. I know what you did. I stared at it for a moment. Then deleted it. Because what she didn't know was this. I didn't do it to get revenge. I did it to stop her from doing it again.